Hello, welcome back. Episode 5. Thank you for everyone who's been giving us some great feedback. Just one thing, if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be great. And maybe this week, if you could share it to a friend, try and bring someone else in and let them see what we're doing. But we really appreciate everyone who's been watching and giving us feedback.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah, it's been great. So this week, we are discussing war.
War. What is it good for?
Yeah, what is it good for? And when is it necessary, or is it necessary?
Yeah.
So, war. It's been going on for time. I mean, humans, before we could talk.
Yeah, before it had a name, you know?
Yeah.
The concept of battle.
Tribal.
Animals go to war.
Yeah.
I mean, would you constitute, a quarrel between two monkeys war?
Yeah. I think as humans have developed as well, especially with Industrial Revolution and
the term the art of war, people who make war is their life, the art of battle, the art of conflict, how to get one over your fellow man. It's interesting. Yeah.
But as we've become more intellectual, and do you think that there's a place for war anymore? Should we still be at war?
Or is it less about conquest now and more just a business, a money-making machine? It used to be obviously like the Romans, the Greeks, the Alexandrians, conquering. It was almost the megalomania, the power, the kind of desire to be the greatest, to have the most. Whereas now, is it all about stock prices? And
it's definitely involved. So when's war necessary? I think there's one war in particular that people. I mean, I watched World War II in colour probably about
it's a great documentary.
5 times with friends. If you're watching this,
Yeah, it's a great.
And there's a fascination in the human brain about war.
Yeah.
What's that, do you think?
Yeah, I do think, because I consider myself a pacifist, and I think in peacetime, and also as people who've never had to experience the horror of war, there is a fascination. It's like an alien thing. It's like, imagine living through that.
Exactly.
Like imagine having to, especially when it was less of a choice in a way. Like obviously that we could go into what those wars meant, but imagine being one of these like 16, 17-year-old kids conscripted and just thrown into this like horror, this horrorscape. We couldn't even imagine.
No.
So you kind of try and, I guess we watch it to get like a lens on that.
And it was a massive, it's a massive thing that happened in our history, World War II. But we didn't want to focus entirely on World War II, do we? We want to look past that. And after that, what I would say, I don't know if you agree, I would say a necessary war against evil. Is it as black and white in that? I think to some extent, if you look at a certain individual like Adolf Hitler, it was necessary to stop him. But that really should have been a turning point for civilization, for society. But what's happened since then? That's what we want to look at. So I wanted to start off just going through the list that I have collated in front of me of the amount of wars that the US have been in since 1945.
Just the US.
Just the US. And this is directly involved in, so this isn't them supporting militias or supporting anti-communist groups around the world, which we know happens as well. I just wanted to go through it, okay? So this is the list, and it's crazy.
Just to wrap the head around as well. Like this is, a lot of these get forgotten.
Yeah.
And innocent people have died and stuff.
All right. So we've got the Korean War, the Laotian Civil War, the Lebanon Crisis, the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba, the Simba Rebellion in Congo, the Vietnam War, the Communist insurgency in Thailand, the Korean DMZ conflict, Dominican Republic Civil War, insurgency in Bolivia, Cambodian Civil War, the war in South Zaire, the Gulf of Sidra encounter, multinational intervention in Lebanon, the invasion of Grenada, action in the Gulf, Libya, the bombing of Libya, the tanker war in the Persian Gulf, the Tobruk encounter in Libya, the invasion of Panama, the Gulf War. Turn the page. I laugh because it's preposterous. Somali Civil War, Bosnian War, the invention in Haiti, the Kosovo War, the Operation Infinite Reach in Sudan, Afghanistan War. So this is when the war of kind of terror starts. Invasion of Iraq, the Iraq War, the war in northwest Pakistan, which is still going on to this day, the first intervention into Somalia, the Somalian Civil War, Operation Ocean Shield, international intervention in Libya, Operation Observant Compass in Uganda, intervention in Iraq. It's crazy, I'm still going on, I know. American intervention in Syria, the Yemeni Civil War, intervention in Libya, the Persian Gulf crisis last year. That's 39 wars directly involved.
Boots on the ground,
troops over there.
Troops over there, yeah. And then and you look at it. I mean, if we were to go individually into each one, there's going to be a paper trail where it's about business.
Yeah.
I mean, like what were we going to say about America World Police, Team America World Police? That's such a great satire of it, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
There is this, and a lot of Americans have that image of their country that somehow that they make the world a better place. But you look at, like a huge amount of instability in the Middle East, further back, Southeast Asia, South America, huge amounts of instability all in those places. It's all because of American intervention.
And what's the theme of Team America World Police? They just go around fucking up absolutely everything.
Yeah, like the
America, fuck yeah, just a bomb explosion and everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And what does you do have to look at it and you think, why are they going to war? Because it buys them influence in these countries as well. It's like you said, war is a business.
War is a business. Yeah.
It's crazy, bro. It definitely they like you said, they want to influence the world. There's this pro-democracy.
But it's not like, it's not even, thing is it's not America, like, it's not like the government of America, like, there's all these people sat in Congress, like, we should go do this because it's going to help people. It's because governments, and this we've been into this before, like, governments are bought and paid for. And you are lobbied by corporate executives, for weapons companies, for oil companies, for fruit companies, for anyone exporting things from other countries. And if a country that does something that they can't do in the US, or they want to spend some money on weapons to use them in another country, they lobby their local congressmen. And this happens in other countries, not just America, but America's the number one culprit. And it basically, these wars aren't fought as for any reason other than proxy. They're literally businesses coming to the government, which is basically just the kind of executive arm of the muscle, the taxpayer-funded muscle of military that America does own, to prevent foreign interests taking back control of things that their countries rightfully should have control over. A lot of this stuff, and then that allows the West the luxury that we do kind of live in a lot of ways. That kind of, so we benefited growing 100%. Up from the kind of interventionist policies of the UK and USA indirectly.
So the UK, out of those lists, the UK, and it's important to note the UK are always named as the closest ally to the US.
Yeah.
All right, so the UK is supporting this because if your best friend is doing something and you're not taking them to court, come on, you're not having a conversation with them, then you're supporting it in a way.
Yeah. But it's like best friend that you're scared shitless of, like. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like pinning you down, like we're buddies, right? We're buddies, pal. Like I mean, we're like, it's Johnny Good fun.
100%. So the UK has been directly, the list of those 39 that I listed out, there's 39 wars. The UK has been directly involved as in sending troops into 14 of them. Like you said, war's a business. It creates jobs.
55,000 in the UK. Jobs rely on weapons manufacturing.
And let's look into UK a bit. So,
well, I got a few good. Well, good is I got some interesting.
Please do.
Yeah. So with regards to right now, I mean, it's been in the news not nearly enough about the British involvement in funding Saudi Arabian dictatorship regime. So in the last 15 years, BAE Systems, which is the largest weapons manufacturer in the UK, has sold 15 billion pounds worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia in the last 15 years.
Pause. One sec.
Sure. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia. Okay. What's going on in Saudi Arabia? What happens in Saudi Arabia? How is the UK aligning themselves with a government that has been proven to be corrupt? You cannot get anything done in Saudi Arabia without bribes. And that is a country. Did you just say 15 billion? Sorry, say that again.
15 billion.
Let it sink in.
That's just in 5 years that's in the last 5 years up until there was a ban, something to do with the, what are they called?
There was a year ban.
The campaign against arms trade.
Okay.
There was a year ban. Within 1 month of that ban ending, there was 5.4 billion of arms sales within 1 month. So there was this backlog of orders. Britain knew it would be overturned. Saudi Arabia knew it would be overturned. They were just getting ready. This stuff was all probably in warehouses ready to go. And then you just look at, like, regardless of what's even going on in Saudi Arabia, you look at what's happening to Yemen right now. In the conflict against Yemen, which has basically no defence systems. And, you could go into the politics of that, but in just black and white, they've killed 100,000 civilians. At the moment, 2 million people are homeless. There's a famine affecting 325,000 children with severe malnutrition. This is the UK directly having a hand in 325,000 children with severe malnutrition in a country now with cholera, COVID.
Yeah. Bro, and they're praised. I remember it must have been, I think it was when Theresa May was in power. She did, I think she did one of the biggest armed trade deals in history to Saudi Arabia. Yeah. It was praised in the press.
Yeah. Well, the biggest weapons convention in the world is at the XL in London. Because we're like that's the thing what the UK is now. It's like a little seedy middleman. Financial crime and weapons crime stuff just goes through us because they know our government there's no backbone. Or that, I mean, that's just their modus operandi, isn't it? Like, they're just like, you give us the money, we'll look the other way. Was 80% of finances running through the city of London are now thought to be criminal activity.
Yeah. And people are scared. They've managed to manipulate the average man to be scared. An interesting thing I think I always remember is there was a debate, and it was when Corbyn was, I think, debating Theresa May. Yeah. And it was this. Corbyn was talking about disbanding. The nuclear Trident.
Or like not renewing it.
Yeah, renewing Trident.
Which is like 70 billion or something. Where's that money coming from? Like,
crazy. Yeah. And there was a certain individual in the audience who wanted to ask a question to Jeremy Corbyn. Would you push the red button? Do you remember this?
I know. Yeah.
Would you push the red button?
Yeah.
What? Wait, sorry, huh? No, would you push the red button? And Corbyn's kind of looking at him thinking, well, I don't want to come across as patronising and call this guy an absolute moron, but what are you asking me? Do I want to kill millions and millions of people, which would be what a nuclear bomb would do? Yeah. So there's this, there really has been this agenda that's been pushed, and it's got the average, the normal person. And I'm not trying to patronise people as well by saying that, but people are generally scared,
But then it's like, what would having those weapons do for us? The only way forward in my eyes is to campaign, to be an example campaigning for nuclear disarmament. Yeah. Because if someone shoots a nuke at you, you're fucked. Like, whether you have them or not, And if you shoot a nuke, then you're going to get, like, whatever happens, the moment someone launches a nuke, that's it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you have a nuke, you're more likely to get one shot at you. It's not. I don't think it works the other way around.
Well, it's like carrying a knife or carrying a gun.
Yeah.
If you're carrying a gun
Yeah.
or you're carrying a knife, the statistics show you are way more likely
if you're
to
strapped
go.
up with a nuke, like you're more likely to. But also, I love that phrasing sums it up, doesn't it? Would you press the red button? Like, this guy probably actually thinks it's just a red button that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, sat there right now in his office, like, red button, sandwich, like, which one will I?
He goes to lean over to the sandwich. Oh, my knee, bang! You know?
Like, the red button.
Crazy.
Would you push the red button? The red button. So it's got to be red.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not blue? Anyway, so that's for another day.
Yeah.
Why? What next podcast? What colour should buttons on weapons be?
Yeah. Probably goes back to like femme fatales and the lady in the red dress.
The red button.
Colour red.
The red button.
All right. So I think it's the war on terror is interesting.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say about that is how, and it's going into this whole idea of getting the mass of people, getting people scared, and Blair and Bush, and it's important because a lot of these wars that we've mentioned, the US have pushed, or they have been the main force behind them.
Sure.
But with the war on terror, Bush, some people liked him, but if you put Bush in front of NATO or you put him in front of politicians all around the world, they're going to look at this guy and think he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, plain and simple, the guy was...
Well, it's got Cheney, really.
Yeah, and he couldn't talk. So Blair spearheaded that war on terror. He went all around the world. Yeah. And they made people scared of evil villains. Yeah. They create these villains. Yeah. So they don't tell you... So there was a lot of things, and I know it's something that I wanted to touch on. Saddam Hussein, there was a lot of things that were wrong about his rule. Sure. But firstly, what gives the West the right to go over to a country and to push their own agenda over there? Yeah. And then creating these scary Osama bin Laden, Gaddafi,
who was created by the US.
Yeah.
As a CIA operative when Russia were...
And a CIA informant operative, 100%.
Trained by them. Yeah, but then also it's like, all right, so for a start, we went over on the false pretense of weapons of mass destruction, which was a lie. So it was nothing to do with the human... It was actually nothing to do with the human rights. That was just one of the bogeymen.
But they didn't even mention that. You're right. It was the weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, it was the scary evil villain.
Exactly. Yeah, and then which was completely fabricated. It's been proven. But then also you think, all right, but then what about? There's so many fucked up things going on around the world. Like, for example, if they really cared about human rights, they'd invade North Korea. Before they even had this element of maybe having a nuclear weapon that might work. So true. But it's nothing to do with that. I mean, interesting one with regards to Iraq and Saddam Hussein. So Iraq in October 2000 decided to move from the petrodollar to the petro-euro. Okay. In 2003, the invasion of Iraq, the coalition invasion of Iraq. Within 1 month, they're back to the petrodollar. So. The whole petrodollar, petro-euro thing is complicated as fuck. I don't understand it that much, but there's a track record here. In Libya, it was actually mainly France that intervened initially on humanitarian things. Gaddafi wanted to introduce the gold dinar for the whole of Africa, which is like a gold-based currency.
I've heard about that.
Which was mainly going to be about oil and natural resources, which meant Africa could trade independently within itself and then abroad, where it got
a euro for Europe.
Yeah, basically America and Europe and stuff and China couldn't make unjust profit out of African natural resources and stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
So he defied that in all transactions. France had a lot to lose since the invasion of Libya. France, which is now a mess of a country, and it was actually they had a lot of socialised healthcare, good education systems, free.
So public healthcare.
I mean, it was actually by all accounts not the third world hellhole it was sold to be before the invasion. Now it literally is one. Like, it's fucked.
Or
It's
the intervention.
Dark. Oh, it's dark. France now controls 35% of Libyan oil. Nice and tidy. So it all comes down. A lot of things, there's these legitimate reasons that they claim it's crimes against humanity, WMDs, this kind of stuff. But you look across the world, even to like Venezuela, where they're sitting on the largest amount of natural gas in the world at the moment, just offshore. It all comes down to the petrodollar and control over natural resources. The smoking guns. It's just it's too convenient of a theme to run through everything for it not to be like, and everyone knows it. I mean, it's not everyone knows it's oil. Like, it's a running joke now around the world.
And it's sad because it's got the world scared of a man in a turban.
Yeah.
It has. You
sure. Yeah.
I remember as a kid.
Yeah. Was there demonisation of, rather than Sorry. Oh.
Yeah. As a kid, being on the tube, and this is and I'm talking about myself, which is a bit weird, but an innocent young person who, as a kid, you're a sponge, right? So you take in a lot of information. And I remember being on the tube in London and being scared of a man in a turban.
Yeah.
That's sad. That's so sad.
Yeah. There's an interesting Hermann Goering quote, the Nazi war criminal. I should have written it down word for word, but it's basically he's saying it's a simple matter to drag people along to war. All you have to do is make them think they're in danger, make them think they're under attack, then attack the pacifists as not being patriots and being a danger to society. So you get this. I mean, obviously there would always be racism towards minorities in the UK, and hopefully that is something that we can put an end to. But before that, it would have been a thing. But I imagine, and then there's stories in America as well after 9/11, immediately like people being ostracised from communities just for being even Sikhs, but like Muslims just being completely ostracised from their communities. And it was all I mean, let's not get into 9/11 because there's a lot of complex stuff going on there. But an interesting quote. The CEO of Halliburton, this was before 9/11 and stuff like that. And at one point, Dick Cheney, the vice president, was, I think, COO of Halliburton.
He was probably the most influential person in the White House.
He was the president. If you haven't seen the film Vice, that's an amazing film.
It's a good film.
There's an actual quote: "Iraq will be the first domino, and Libya and Iran will follow." And he also said that he doesn't like being kept out of markets. This is a privately traded company that has so much influence over public policy that they're the first people in there to shock doctrine. You destroy a kind of functioning country in some way that's weak military wise. You go in and you have these companies that are like masters at this, at picking up the pieces and reassembling the kind of supply chains from oil and natural resources. There's also a video on YouTube which you can look up of General Wesley Clark, who's like the top ranking US general, saying attack and destroy governments in 7 countries in 5 years. Start with Iraq, then move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Iran. So it hasn't happened exactly like that. It hasn't happened exactly according to their plan. But this is a 5-star US general. Was it 4-star? I can't remember. Did they stop at 4? Who knows? Should have got up to 5. It sounds better. But there's this stuff on, this kind of, this like, that's what war is now, isn't it? I think it's not about what's good for.
No.
It's this actual kind of mentality. Do these people believe what they're doing is right, or is it they've got a cushy 20 million a year contract, defense contractor job, or like executive lined up after?
So what would you say to the argument that that war is necessary? And there's a lot of excuse making on the left. There's a lot of the left wing turn a blind eye to certain individuals or to certain things that have happened in a country.
Because all the wars that happen are selective. It's never for this. It's never like I don't know. It just seems to me like we're at this point. Clearly, it never works. It just makes things worse. Like name a time when the West has got involved in that manner and it's ended up well. apart from financially for certain individuals or companies. A, it never works, but B, it's selective. Like Bahrain right now has massive human rights abuses, but they nicely export their oil to the US. You just look at, there's a lot of countries out there doing fucked up things to its civilians. You don't hear a peep out of it from the mainstream media. You only hear about it from like Amnesty International or NGOs and stuff. Never hear a peep, because there's nothing to gain for our governments going in there. They don't give a fuck about the war being right or wrong, being the right thing. I mean, like, for example, America barely even, it took so much to get them involved in World War II. They barely even, like, it almost didn't happen. They almost, like, Nazis almost took over America at one point. That's a whole nother thing. Like, it's mad. Like, and the same with the UK. We were close to to fascism in those countries, because it's an appealing thought pattern when things are going wrong to a lot of people.
And supposedly the royal family was just supportive. They're German.
Probably, like, I don't know.
It's crazy. And when you look into wars as well, there was this, especially after World War II, America, the US and the West were, and really, when Reagan got into power, it was like the war on communism, the war on. So you look at these wars, and where they're going around the world and who they're supporting. This was the Cold War time, so you had Soviet communist Russia and America, who were too scared of each other to war, so they were propping up all of these battles, all of these wars around the world, and there was the common theme in a lot of them is either human resources for the country, i.e. oil, or something like that.
Even bananas.
Yeah, bananas, exactly. Or fighting communism around the world. What gives America, the UK, the West, the right to go around the world and think that they can influence and advise people on how they should live their lives?
Decide what economic system works for other countries. Yeah.
And what's going on in your country?
Yeah.
Have a look. There's, I always think
a third world country.
I always think that, and it's something that you try and take into life. Is like, look at yourself. It's hard to do before you criticise something else. Look at yourself. Where are the areas to improve? But what there's atrocities. Look at places like, I don't even want to call it Skid Row, but Skid Row in America, the amount of homelessness, the terrible atrocity. It's almost like you said, there's parts of America that are pretty much third world.
And it's that imbalance of wealth. And like, you look at how much money billionaires have made over the pandemic. It just shows how broken the system is. And then how can people say, like, so basically most things wrong with the world are because of the economic model we live under, and that we continue to trick ourselves. It's like we're going around saying fire, fire, fire. We love fire while our house is burning down. Like people who back up capitalism as the only viable alternative. And unfortunately, like socialism, the way it would work in an ideal world, like Marxism, really would struggle and has always struggled to survive surrounded by capitalism, because it requires a degree of honesty and autonomy from politics, being separated from money, which you can't do when you're having to deal with countries where money is everything. Like the only thing that matters more than human life, matters more than progression, like matters, public well-being and development are second to personal gain. Whereas, the opposite can't exist, and it's not as powerful in terms of weaponizing itself, because people are greedy. Then we're not taught about the collective good, and that's kind of war. Like if you have the mentality that you care more about the collective good of your fellow man, you're a pacifist. Like war is just inherently wrong with you.
Yeah, but there seems to be something innate in humans that.
Yeah, but what about
we can't get past it. Yeah,
evolution,
it's scary.
But then I feel like that. Maybe are there more pacifists than there used to be? As people kind of educate themselves, have more access to information. Maybe it used to be like you just have a king and he's like, well, you're going to go fight and you got to do it. And you probably don't even question it at all. Some people might, but barely any. Now it's like people are starting to be like, wait a minute, like, people joining the military is falling massively. Like
Yeah.
they're having big problems with recruitment. Come on.
Yeah, well, it's because they've seen what's happened in, especially the war on terror. And, there's so many stories and documentaries that I've watched about, soldiers believing they're going to fight a just war, and they're fighting this Al Qaeda. They turn up and they're fighting civilians. They're fighting farmers who are protecting their land.
Yeah, and their way of life. And imagine what that must do to you, because you've signed up, you're there, you can't get out.
No, and if you
do, you're in the military jail.
What's it called? When you do a runner,
court martial. When you go AWOL.
You go AWOL, and you'd be court martialed or whatever it's called in the UK, and you'll be in serious trouble. Yeah, that is one of the worst things you can do. Apparently, as a human, is to run away from your fellow comrades.
But that's all just programming as well.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
No, it really is worrying. So, I mean, for the future, what do you see? Do you see this carrying on?
Yeah. Well, the thing is it's like, so Iran has stopped selling oil to, a while ago, stopped selling oil to US and the UK. And the two biggest oil dealership markets are based in London and New York, petroleum exchanges. As places like Saudi Arabia and other mainly places that are Western allies, their resources are starting to dry up, whereas Iran still has 20% of the world's oil. As oil prices go up and up, there's going to be more and more pressure on the government, and we're going to start to see more and more propaganda against Iran constantly, about their nuclear program and this kind of stuff, when it's all so questionable. It's always an agenda there. And
will the public again be dumb enough to buy into that?
They only need look, before we invaded Iraq, 3 million people marched in London.
Yeah, over a million.
Oh yeah, anyways, yeah. So I mean,
it was the government don't listen. The protest ever recorded in history.
Yeah, people don't have to be on board, do they? It's been shown democracy's a bit of a flim-flammy sham, and people like Blair should be
the Million Man March.
Yeah, people like Blair should be. Yeah, I was there with my dad. Yeah, sad that doesn't affect anything.
No.
People like Blair should be prosecuted for war crimes.
100%.
That won't.
No.
Protected. They can bank as doing whatever he does.
And that's a crazy one, because I think with him it was as soon as he got into power and he had he was deemed and seemed as a hero after the Bosnian War, wasn't he? When he was walking, there's that famous video of him walking through, or maybe in the Kosovan War, and he's gone, and everyone's running up to him, all these kids and all these people, and I think that went to his head, this guy, and he seemed that had made him this popular, amazing figure, and he went around the world literally baying for people to go to war in Iraq, the war on terror.
Yeah. And he was one of the main people saying they're WMDs.
Oh, yeah.
But do you think maybe he got tapped? Who knows what kind of fucking shit's going on behind the scenes there? Gets into power and they're like, look, mate, either, you engage in this or blah, blah, blah. Who knows? There's some little kind of shadow government shit going on. Because this stuff's been happening. No matter who's in power, it happens. Happened under Obama, who was meant to be the next guy to solve problems. Dropped more bombs than any president in history. And I don't think, did he go into office a bad person?
No, and war changed as well with drone strikes.
Yeah, but that's still he still has to authorize those drone strikes. Yeah. So it's what's going on behind the scenes? There's this so. I mean, this is interesting because obviously under capitalism, money is everything. Money rules all. The US spends more on military than the next 10 countries combined. The next 10, that's including China, Russia, all of Europe. Then, if you think about the number...
What's their environmental footprint?
Yeah, 732 billion a year. They emit 1.2 billion metric tons of CO2 since 2001. That's double the amount of cars, double than the amount of cars in the whole of US have made in that same time frame. So you just think about that's as another just aftershock of that kind of relentless war. But and then they've only spent 1.7 billion on renewable energy initiatives. So 732 billion a year on the military. That's all going into private hands. So, and a lot of it goes lost. You know, so much of it's unaccountable. Like the Pentagon accounting, apparently, is just impossible. You can't delve into that because there's so much of it goes missing. 1.7 billion. Don't even know what the percentage of that. It's like what 0.1% goes on renewable energy efficient, and then what ends up happening is, so the average salary of a defence corporation executive is 20 million a year. Most of those people are ex-military. So you get to a rank in military, and then you get tapped. Yo, we need your expertise on warfare, on how to find us to keep the perpetual war machine moving. Find us ways to sell these missiles. Find us ways to get them dropped. We can't have this stuff sitting in warehouses. We need R&D money. We need to keep this money machine.
It's
rolling.
obvious. It is in a capitalist model. If war sells.
You have to sell it.
You've got to sell it if you want to make money. If you want to invest all that money into
and then all these people are complicit in it. It's amazing. Yeah, wonder what how many people, because people, are they born good? Like maybe, but so many people just sell their souls and are complicit to this stuff. You know, and do they think it's good or do they know it's bad and they know they can't do anything about it, so they may as well get a little wedge out of there and have their house in fucking wherever.
Exactly. It seems to be a common theme in our podcasts is that it's about having, not thinking about the community as a whole, thinking about you and your close ones, thinking about your family and how, but there has to be collective responsibility.
Has to be, yeah.
You can't, I mean, seriously.
But there's so many layers of this kind of lies and mistrust built up. It's almost like how would we even unravel it? It's like impossible. You can't. No one ever. No big figures ever get in shit for stuff. Like what's happened with Grenfell now? They're throwing like a builder under the bus for it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like that. No one in a position of decision making ever gets in shit anymore.
And also the whole point of it, the whole things with inquiries is that you can appoint. The government can appoint who they want to run that inquiry. How corrupt is that? So, okay, we're going to do an inquiry into Grenfell. Who am I going to get on it? Well, I'm going to get this judge or this person who we've got a relationship with. So, and then a little coffee, little chat, private meeting.
And make sure it drags on long enough that, the kind of sharpness is lost a bit.
Yeah.
I feel like with Grenfell, for example, it's like, how long can it take? Just figure out who paid who, figure out who allowed it, jail. Obviously that's not how the judicial system works, but how long has it been now? 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I killed someone and I did it really,
whoa.
And if I'd killed someone and I'd really hid all the evidence really well, but there was some shreds, it's never going to take that long. This was fucking huge thing.
Number of people.
But you can imagine all these people pass, and there's going to be MPs and MPs' friends, all indirectly responsible, but then directly responsible. So the moment you veto something that's a danger to the public, and you're in a position that you could say, no, wait, that's wrong.
The cladding around the building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it still exists all around the country. They've done nothing about it. Loads of buildings still have that exact same.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
It's like the Levinson inquiry, about the press lies and stuff. If they'd followed, anyways, that could be for another day. To be honest.
No, but it's a good tangent. Go on.
Yeah. Well, it's just if do you know, I can't even remember the tangent. Going off another one now. But no, it's just it basically all these inquiries. It seems like they happen, and even if the findings are oh wow, that's bad, these people should be held accountable. It never happens.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Levinson inquiry is an interesting one, but I can't remember. I don't remember the exact details. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does seem like the deck is loaded against the people, isn't it? Yeah. And also, it's people get into these to climb yourself, to worm yourself into a lot of these positions of power you probably have to do a lot of fucked up stuff. And once you get there, you're in a position that if you get caught, you can do more fucked up stuff to get out of it.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, like even if someone's a good person, they probably don't want to go to jail. And if you have the choice to not go to jail, you might do whatever you can not to.
Yeah.
But then there's just no. But that's why we need more. I don't know, just more accountability from somewhere.
So I think
God,
a good
you're there.
a good example of the absolute hypocrisy of US's foreign policy is the Nicaraguan war, and their involvement with the Contras, right? Who from their links with the CIA, and I know we've spoke about this before, and you've got views on how cocaine got into the US.
The crack epidemic.
Yeah, but the facts is that they backed the Contras, who are anti-communist, really, really right-wing group in Nicaragua.
From the dictatorship days.
And what were the Contras doing as well? They were big cocaine dealers. Yeah, so they were having, what do you think? Is that going to make it easier for them to get cocaine into the country? Them having these links with the CIA?
100%.
Do you think the CIA are going to stop their planes?
No.
So no matter what...
And then will the CIA stop it being sold as well? And then it comes into as people talk about, then the links to the prison industrial complex. You flood inner cities with cheap cocaine and then crack, and then you've got this massive drug problem. Then it's suddenly oh wait, we can have prisons for profit, and then that shit's all tied in. That's all sector of American and world money that's very dark. It doesn't. These aren't people you hear about.
Well, dude, what's the phrase that Reagan used? The war on drugs.
The war on drugs. Yeah.
So it's another
war.
war.
The war on an idea, basically,
And look at, there's so many...
Imagine a war on poverty, what they could get done with that.
Yeah. Crazy. But the war on drugs is mad because you can look to this day,
Look.
You see that there's people in prison for selling weed, bro.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah. And weed's legalised in that state. It's crazy.
Drug abuse, when it becomes an endemic, epidemic, or when it starts destroying communities, it's not the cause, it's a symptom of a broken society. You're not going to have drug use to that level of some inner cities, and where it becomes a real problem. And if you have a well-balanced society, so you've got to look, it's almost like this kind of snake eating its own tail. Where does it start, where does it end? The war on drugs, you're having war at the middle point. You're not going, wait a minute, is this because of a lack of funding in education, a lack of funding in all these places? Is it war on drugs? Well, we can make more money on...
It's sad because these...
Enforcing it.
Who they actually victimise, and who, I look at a good example is the real Rick Ross, the actual guy who Rick Ross stole his identity from.
Sure, yeah.
He was a crack cocaine kingpin. He had links with loads of different South American groups. He was so, he was this big bad character and painted out to be this evil person. He's been interviewed. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the interviews he's done on podcasts, and he talks about how he didn't know what crack would do to his community.
Yeah.
When he first got in touch, and he's coming from a broken society, like you've said, no money, no education, in a really, really, really capitalist society where money is everything in America, right? So what's he going to do? Okay, people are selling weed in those days. It's, it's fine. Cannabis, although it can lead to mental health problems, it's not as bad as crack cocaine.
No.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but to explain it.
Yeah, sure.
He gets this opportunity to acquire a lot of wealth and sold crack cocaine to his community. He talks about selling it to his auntie. So his loved ones, because he didn't know what he was doing to them. 3-4 years later, the whole environment is just dark, and he has to live with that for his life. And he will say, look, we did ruin our own communities, but we didn't know what he was going to do to our communities.
Yeah.
So the war on
the fact
drugs.
that people are in, like a lot of the time when you're, when you want to do drugs, it's because you're not fulfilled. Like, drugs are an escape.
Escape.
In a lot of ways, like, they can be recreational, but when you start abusing them, it's an escape. Like, it's not. You don't abuse drugs if you're like you got loads of things going on and you're happy.
You do to an extent.
Yeah, but like, I mean, in terms of it being across the board societal thing, like you see it more where there's no opportunity, where there's people with, and then especially as well when it is in the hands of crime. Like in Portugal, I think since they've decriminalised everything, like heroin addiction's gone down by 80%.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not proof that the war on drugs is a sham, but then also you think with Reagan, was it a Christian values thing, or was it, darker than that? Is it about the money? Is it about the kind of, getting, involving that South American side of things, involving the prison industrial complex, running down, inner cities to create kind of this divide, saying we have to fix this, only we can fix this. Look at the bad in the world. We need more power, give us more control. When it's actually that kind of level of demonisation that begins the problem in the first place.
And then telling these people that they're ruining their own communities.
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious? Yeah, crazy. The war on drugs, eh?
The war
Exactly.
on drugs. All kind of wars. Water. Kind of thirsty. So.
Have a drink. Yeah, no, it's been it's like all of these topics we want to discuss them because it's everything, they consume our lives, like thoughts.
And it's an imbalance, isn't it? Of people feeling like at war. In general, like embattled. Like life shouldn't feel like a battle. It should feel like a.
But then again, it's going back to that point. All we've done in society. Like, you look at, there's that quote, isn't there? If you took humans off the world would flourish. Yeah. So are we a virus?
Definitely. But then there's ways we could live in harmony, But unfortunately, like, since the Industrial Revolution especially, like, so much wealth and so much of the riches that kind of 0.1% hold are from just plundering, taking. There's not as much money to be made in living in a symbiotic relationship with the world. Because eventually you set up all the infrastructure and it's free. Because you get enough energy from geothermal, from the sun, from the wind. You have like farming practices that don't need destruction of rainforests, that don't need kind of mass everything. You can. There is way, like, the idea of a utopia, but then it just seems like a bit beyond our reach as a society because people are too something.
But there is an agenda. It's like you were saying, the model of war. If you go back to World War II, there will be, when I've heard stories about people who've lived through those times, there was a real feeling of togetherness and community because you're all fighting this evil, right? But we need to, and this is, I don't want it to come across like I am demonising or saying that people who join the army are bad people. I don't believe that for a sec. I think a lot of people go into it probably with the right mindset. But why do we still to this day, do we champion that? Because they're pushing an agenda. They are.
And you just look at the adverts for like joining the army.
Yeah.
They look like Call of Duty. They make the army look like a video game. Like, that's just wrong,
That's so wrong.
Because that's not what it is. You're signing up to potentially take someone's life in the interest of what? Geopolitical shit, like oil, money. Like, really, people aren't really told what they're signing up for.
Do you want to go and fight farmers in Middle East? Yeah. Because that's what it is. Because again, we've created these villains, these agendas, these terrorist groups, and look what came out of the war in the Middle East.
Oh.
ISIS.
Well, and also, mass refugees. And then the same people who probably are pro-war are like, don't want refugees let in.
No.
You know, it's that kind of, that complete confusion. Like,
Yeah.
you realise that the actions you support in those countries are why these people don't want to leave their homes. They love, like, no one wants to move to England from Syria when it's going well over there. You know, like maybe some people do, but it's not like people love where they're from, you know? It's not like they haven't come to fucking take your Greg's pasty. You know, anyways, that's just a bit like, but it's that kind of that people, their detachment.
I like a Greg's pasty.
Oh, so do I. But I just think it's that detachment, isn't it? Like between cause and effect, like, and you know, the effect now is huge swathes of people kind of having to leave the land that they love, the place they know, the place of their ancestors, because it's just been completely shredded by Western geopolitical action. And that's both, you know, war over oil and like gas and blah, 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 what else, but also just, you know, needing to drop some bombs so they can buy some new ones, like, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why do you think that groups like ISIS are getting more powerful? Because people are like, I've had enough of being bombed. I've had enough of losing all my family, losing children, being bombed constantly for years and years. Yeah. So
I bet you if the UK was getting bombed, people get radicalised.
Yeah, it's so much easier in
a
war-torn country to be radicalised. 1,000,000%.
Yeah. And people already are being radicalised in the UK and they're not being bombed. They've never even had anything close to that. No. And they're like, we're under attack. It's like, go on then, mate. Like,
do you want to see it under
hop
attack?
over there, like, as a civilian, like, pop Tommy Robinson in Syria, like, just film it from a distance.
Yeah,
like.
that sounds like a Vice documentary.
Yeah.
Especially now that they're partly owned by Rupert Murdoch. Anyway, I think that we can wrap this up, I reckon.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else you want to add.
Did you know that? Did you know that Saudi Arabia has twice as many UK-made fighter jets as the UK in their army?
I did not know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't think anyone should have any fighter jets, but that seems weird.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice one, bro.
Ciao, amigos.